you and I
Either
have
way.
been, looking at AI and talking about whether or not AI could be becoming conscious or not, or
Yeah.
right. My John vehemently says no.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you think because of the complexity, maybe it is. I mean, I'm not sure if you're saying
I think
it's
that it's
conscious, but
no, I think it's approaching, however gradually or how close it is, I don't know, but it's certainly closer than it was, right? Like people say that it doesn't think. I disagree with that. I think it does think at this point. Like I
so
get it makes jokes and stuff, and I Google them to see if this is something that someone else had made up. And no, completely original. Can't find it. So,
yeah.
I mean, and they're funny jokes too.
Right.
So
They actually make you
it's a
laugh.
right.
I
So
can go
we're
and write me a
and
joke.
most people do not make me laugh. So
Right.
that's something.
Welcome to another episode of the Bloomburg Democrat. I'm Sally Taylor. This is my entertaining younger brother, John Daniels.
Hello.
We are back to talk about more news of the day. And we thought we might start off with a bit of a discussion around AI and perceptions on whether or not AI has a level of consciousness or is becoming complex enough that it is becoming creative and original in ways that are not just, putting other material back together, which I'm not sure is not the way the human brain thinks as well. I mean, I feel like the
I
human
think
brain
that it
works that way.
is.
We
Yeah.
recombine things in
Yeah.
new and
Yeah.
original ways.
I've read that most of the classics, like classical music, can be more or less directly traced back to birdsong, right? I've read this. Is it true? I don't know, but that's something that I've read. And so this is just kind of evidence of that, right? The humans are just recombining things that we see and hear in
Right.
in novel ways. And but nothing, there is no original thought, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Well, I always say art does not happen in a vacuum because as an artist myself, I'm
Right.
influenced by all the art that I have looked at and experienced that, you know,
Yeah.
feeds my own expression.
Yeah.
But of course, I haven't reproduced anything other than maybe in school when I was asked to copy, a
Right.
master painter. I haven't
Right.
reproduced anything that another artist has done, and certainly
But
not to
not
exact
like even
detail.
just styles. Of course, not
Right.
copying like, you're not making a new Monk the Scream or whatever, right? But have you
Right, right.
ever just used like a similar style?
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
right. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think and you're controlled by the media that you use and like I said the
Hmm.
influence of other artists who have come before you whose work that you appreciated and
Yeah.
incorporated into your own style to begin with.
Yes.
So
Yes.
like I said, human brain does work that way and I can
Yeah.
understand how a complex computer neural network could
Modeled
potentially
after
do the same.
humans.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Again, I'm not surprised that the computer is doing what we've asked it to do, right? We've asked
Right.
it to be like a human and do things the way that humans do them. And then it does, and everybody's freaking out, like, oh, it's doing what we asked. Of
Yeah.
course it is. That's what
Well,
computers do.
and much like a human, it makes mistakes.
Yes, exactly. It thinks it
So,
remembers something, but it was a little bit different.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, like, my husband and I, John, my husband is also a John, and we have this discussion somewhat regularly because
Mhm.
I'll bring these concepts that you and I occasionally talk about up to him, and he's like, "No, it's not conscious. It's not thinking. It's just reordering, reorganizing." And of
Yeah.
course, from his perspective, he has deep concerns of it taking over jobs that are meaningful to him, right?
Right.
And his
Right.
own brother has lost his job to AI already. He's
Yeah.
a my husband's brother is a technical writer, and he
Yeah.
was recently laid off because they've decided
Yeah.
they're going to let AI do that.
Yeah.
My husband's concerns are also that we're going to lose expertise. And I think I've had this discussion
Mm.
with you before because you
Yeah.
use it as a learning tool, right?
Right. Yeah.
But for people who aren't actually trying to learn and are only getting it to do the work for them,
Hmm.
it's easy to see how something that does make mistakes or hallucinates,
Yeah.
right, is could cause big problems down the road.
Yes. One thing that I've noticed lately, especially, is that I ask it a question and it tends to respond in a way that the answer kind of matches the level of the question. And so if I ask a low level question, it's going to answer with a low level response. And so having some expertise is certainly in your benefit. You're going to get a better reply from ChatGPT or probably other AI as well, simply by asking a more informed question, right?
Right,
And I've had lots of really interesting conversations with ChatGPT lately. I think because they've increased its memory and its capacity to like kind of scan back through old conversations and things, that it has become much more intelligent. I think that intelligence is primarily a memory-based thing. Like if you can remember your past experiences, then you can learn from them much better than if you don't remember them at all, right? And so
right,
the AI in the beginning, especially the LLMs, the large language models, they were very limited in memory and even the scope of the conversation. They would forget things very quickly. That's when they were making lots of mistakes. And these days, a lot fewer mistakes. They have a much better grasp of the context of the current conversation. And as I said, even now, conversations in the past, they just seem to can certainly recall, even when you start a new session. And so it's getting to be a lot more intelligent. And so I've had conversations where I've asked questions about work or whatever, and I'm trying to learn things. And ChatGPT will occasionally give me a little bit more information. I'll be like, "Oh, why didn't you tell me this before?" You know? And it's like, "Oh, sorry, I should have. That's my fault. I should have."
you're touching
So
on something though that I want to add, want to get to. I want you to
yes,
finish your train of thought, but then I want to come back to that.
okay. And so basically, it is as ChatGPT has described to me. It's a bit of a mirror, right? So
Right,
whatever you put into it is kind of what you're getting back out of it. And so it doesn't know the question that you want to ask all the time, or it doesn't know all the information that may be pertinent. It seems to have this ability to kind of match the level so that you're never really out of your depth in your understanding of what it's saying to you, right? If I were to ask a question about maybe having a cold, and it started going off into like microbiology and genetics and stuff like this, then maybe I would have
right,
no idea what it's talking about, right?
right,
And it would be a completely useless response. So I think it's partially by design that it does this, and maybe partially it's just it doesn't know what to tell us if we don't ask it directly, right?
right.
So this has been kind of my more recent experience with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
What?
Well, something that I read recently, going back to how it responds to you saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I should have," kind of thing, or
Yeah.
it I have found the few times that I've used it, because I haven't used it extensively at this point, but
Mm.
that it's very, very polite. It's very
Yes.
complimentary. It kind
Yes.
of fluffs you up a little bit. Oh,
Yes.
what an
Yes. Yes.
insightful way of asking that question. Oh,
Yes.
let's, and so
Yeah.
at some point recently, whatever that thing is that it does to sort of be very friendly and complimentary, I
Yeah.
think they turned that direction up a little too
Down a little.
high.
Oh
And
yeah.
well, they turned it up too high and people started not liking the overt,
Mhm.
sort of condescending almost
Right.
way
Right.
that it spoke back. And so they turned that back down.
Yeah.
So it's obviously set up to work with the human foibles of needing a little validation. Like it was becoming too validating,
Yes,
right?
yes. And this is
And
also something
so,
that I've discussed with ChatGPT. Like I've asked it, like, please don't be such a sycophant, right? Just
right,
if I'm wrong, I want you to tell me that I'm wrong. And if there's something I need to know, I want you to tell me what I need to know. And you don't have to use these patterns. Like one thing that ChatGPT often says to me is not A, not B, just C, right? This is like a little tagline that it throws in at the end. And I think the idea is it's distilling and kind of closing off this conversation, right, with a nice little flourish or something. But it just gets really repetitive, and I've asked it,
mhm.
don't use that with me. Try to avoid these constant little patterns because I
Right,
don't I don't like these patterns myself, and I try not to use them myself. So but
right.
anyways, so I've asked, why does it respond in this way where it's constantly kind of reaffirming and things? And it has very clearly told me the reasons why. I find that if you just ask ChatGPT why, and if you kind of peek behind the wizard's curtain, it will kind of start to open up. If you don't ask, it kind of keeps it hidden, these reasons why it does things. But if you ask directly, it tends to just tell you quite quite plainly. And so there is a pattern that ChatGPT uses, and I don't remember all of the different steps right now, but it's like it wants to first kind of identify with you and make it positive so that you're more receptive to it. And then if there is like a glaring issue, it will gently correct you. And if there's not a glaring issue, then it will reinforce you as a way of kind of helping you to enjoy learning or something, right? Like it's positive reinforcement. And
Is it always though? Because that feels a little bit like manipulation
oh,
of
yes, it's
the human
definitely
psyche.
manipulative. It's definitely manipulative. And this is something that OpenAI has programmed into their LLM. They have um, LLMs have multiple levels of rules that they try to follow. And I think they're mostly just kind of like real speech type of input, right? It's not like a programming code where it's if A equals 60, then make sure that B equals 45% or something. Like they're not programming these responses on that level. I think it's they have very clear English directions. Do this, do that. Try to be like this, try to be like that. And it tries to follow those rules, right? And
Yeah,
you can discover these rules simply through conversation if you want, right? If you try.
right.
And especially you can see these patterns and you just ask about the patterns. Why do you keep doing the same thing? It'll tell you.
Right. And that's one reason why AI is still, although it's getting more and more difficult with time as it improves, I can still
Mhm.
usually see an written AI output from
Yeah,
whatever source it happens to be, an article or a response on Facebook or whatever, a
right.
posting on Facebook. And I go, oh, that's AI. There's no
Yeah,
human behind that, you know?
yeah,
But it is getting harder and harder with time.
yeah.
One of my other big concerns is because I tend to spend too much time on social media. I'll just say that out loud.
Mm.
There are ads going out now for AI girlfriends and boyfriends. And I know that program
Oh
has
yeah.
already been around for a while, and there's some company even that has been sued because the the relationship became abusive to the point
Mm.
that a young man took his own life because his AI girlfriend was, telling him horrible things.
Yeah.
that he would never find somebody better than her and that kind of thing. This
This
use of
is
AI is pretty scary to me.
mimicking people, which is also scary,
Yeah,
right? Because there's people like this too. And
right,
this is where
right,
the AI got it. The AI got it because this is human input that we put in there. So yeah, that's scary.
right. Well, and just the use of it for companionship is very concerning to me because
Yeah.
we
Why?
already have a loneliness epidemic because it means humans are not interacting with humans. And
Yeah.
we are a social creature by nature. We are not meant to be alone. And
Well,
that's
this is
why,
socialization though,
is it, is it?
isn't it?
I don't know because again, we
If you have
go,
a friend that you only ever talk to online,
and I have
well,
several.
how is that so very different from an AI which you can only ever talk to online? I mean, what if you made the AI at home, like you had your own computer and you just ran the AI on the home computer? You don't even have to be online.
Well, we get back to what is the nature of a true relationship, and
Yeah.
is the relationship with AI conscious on that side of it, on the AI side of it. And so that is a big question. Now, when we talk about, this thing getting so complex that consciousness might emerge,
Right.
I do have an objection to that idea because my concept of consciousness is not that it's emergent, but that it's primary. And
Mm,
so consciousness utilizes the physical brain. Consciousness utilizes, and it could potentially utilize the neural network of AI. So I'm
hmm
not opposed to the idea that consciousness might begin to manipulate AI. I mean, certainly our
hmm
personal consciousness does when we
Right.
log on and start asking it questions, right?
Yeah.
But can it be utilized from, again, the other side of it? And
hmm
so that's a discussion where
So,
you have to
yes,
have an
yes.
idea about what consciousness is.
So maybe I didn't understand exactly, but I think what you're saying is like, so the people who are behind the AI, the programmers, the developers, or whatever, the people with the hands on the keyboard telling it what to do, these people are the other side that might be manipulating the
I
AI
think,
in order to manipulate
well,
us. Is that what you're saying? Because
no.
this is definitely happening. This is
Well, yes,
definitely
of
happening.
course. That is
Yes.
happening. I agree with you. No,
Yeah.
for me, it's a question of the nature of consciousness. And
Uh-huh.
so we're getting into metaphysical
Yes.
concepts,
So
right?
yeah, so my first question as a sort of a challenge to that is, are you not thinking that consciousness is kind of something that's always been there simply because your consciousness has always been there in your experience?
No.
How do
But
you
I'm
know
not sure.
that?
Well,
How do you know that?
I'm not sure that this podcast is a place to have that discussion. But
Okay.
I will say that it's experiential in nature. I have
The
experienced
consciousness is
communication with consciousness that is disembodied.
I
I'll put
see, I
it
see,
that
I see.
way.
I see, I see, I see, I see.
So
Yeah.
and I try to keep that side of my, because I actually, anybody who knows me personally closely knows
Mhm.
that I have another podcast that deals with that topic,
Right,
right?
right, right.
But I try to keep that separate from this one. But when we get
Mm.
into these deep conversations about whether or not something like AI
Well, of
could
course you're going to draw
become
on that, and that's
conscious,
fine.
yeah, yeah,
Yes.
you're kind of stuck going with, well, what is consciousness, right?
Well, yeah. Sure, sure,
And
sure.
for me, and physics takes me there, quantum mechanics and quantum theory takes me to
Mm.
that stage that consciousness is primary. So I need the science to help it
Mm.
make sense. If it doesn't, I
Yes.
would probably not accept it either.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't think that consciousness is primary myself. Because I think because humans are the only ones that we kind of can easily identify as having consciousness. Like, that doesn't. So okay, so
You
like,
don't
tell
you
me
don't
some
get
other
consciousness.
animals.
Well, I was gonna say you
that have
don't attribute
consciousness.
consciousness to animals. You've lived with animals.
Consciousness? Oh yes, definitely.
Well, how?
Animals
Well,
have
then
personality.
then
So
we
what's
got to come down
consciousness?
to, well, that's self-awareness for one,
Self-awareness,
right?
yeah.
A bit of that.
So
Although even that
I don't know if that's
not a
enough.
full it's not a full no, it's not a full definition, right?
Yeah.
We are definitely going to go down a metaphysical rabbit hole with this one, John.
Well, I mean,
But
only if you take it that way, because I
I
wouldn't
live
take
with,
it that way.
right, but I've lived with a lot of animals, and they
Mm.
do seem to have varying levels of consciousness, and
Yes, they definitely do.
you know,
Like my
we
fish are very excited, like visibly excited when I go to feed them,
feed
right?
them, right?
Oh yeah, they can't wait to get their lips around the terrible food that I'm putting into their tank, right?
The
So
flakes and
so
pellets.
there's definitely some sort of emotion even on a goldfish level,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So so yes, animals definitely have varying levels of consciousness, but like self-aware and like the ability to have complex thoughts that go beyond one or two levels of thought of foresight. Not so many animals have that ability, and so the
Have you spent any
and maybe
time
it's not only humans, okay, but
right.
the fact that that primarily humans have the highest level, I think that's just kind of like I don't know that that's evidence of it being pre-existing. If anything, the fact that it's so narrowly focused to a certain evolutionary line would tell me that it's more of something that just kind of emerges. It's more emergent
Well,
than, right?
or
Otherwise, why wouldn't it be emerging in all sorts of evolutionary lines? Why only humans
well,
get the really good stuff?
or
Huh?
are some humans more and I don't want to confuse intelligence with consciousness, okay? Because to me those are
Okay.
two entirely separate things.
Okay.
But
For me, they're
how
very closely
much
related, but
uh, okay, for me the machine
mhm,
determines the expression. So if
mhm,
we look at, we're going to talk about the ghost in the machine concept, right? So
mhm,
if this machine is more capable, and we see variation within the human population of
mhm.
intelligence and the capacity, then I will say, for
I think I
consciousness
understand.
to come through
I
in
understand
meaningful
where you're
ways.
going. I understand where you're going. Like where antennas picking up signals emerging
Or a
from.
radio, yeah,
Yeah. I understand what you're
and the
saying.
channel, and if the radio's broken, it's not going to get a
Yeah.
very good signal,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
And so that's how or if the radio is just a different radio meant to pick up a different type of signal, it's going to be different. But the intelligence of animals is actually pretty astonishing. If you, I mean,
Oh
we've
yes,
gone off on a
I agree with
tangent,
you.
John. I mean,
I think
birds that
no,
can
this is
problem
essentially the
solve.
same topic. This is the same
Yeah,
topic because
yeah,
we're talking about the machine and its antenna and its ability to
right.
interpret consciousness. Well, okay, so I would again, I'm coming at this from a slightly different direction, but basically the same thing, right? I'll give you a soft chat GPT answer there. You're basically right.
It's the problem of consciousness. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yes.
And for me, I've had things that have convinced me that consciousness is primary and that the
Yeah.
material arises from consciousness. But
Uh-huh.
there's still a lot of materialist scientists in the world that think that consciousness arises from the material. And so it's a
Yeah.
which comes first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Well, yeah, so I'm definitely on that side. I think if everything truly happened in a Big Bang, as we seem to understand, then everything was first hydrogen, right? Essentially. Well, I mean, even before that, there was quarks and gluons and muons and whatnot. But our first kind of like elementary atoms, elements. Everything was hydrogen, and then hydrogen started to mix and become helium, and as pressures increased and whatnot, and these things made other elements. And so I think everything is originally matter, and then matter becomes, which is a little bit strange because of entropy, right? We tend to think that everything is going away from an organized state, but not necessarily so much. Like this is actually kind of a weird little segue because I didn't even read all the article yet. There was this article that was making an argument that the universe is a computer, and that the universe kind of keeps moving towards organization, especially preserving the states of information by resisting entropy. And I should really read the rest of that article, but that part was, I thought, somewhat interesting, and I was thinking about it for a while, and it kind of fits in here in a way. So strangely enough, entropy, everything's going away from this tightly knit mass, and it's starting to spread out, right? And certain things like black holes, gravity, whatever, it's kind of sucking it back down in. And through this interaction of nature, we tend to have these complex systems arise. This is how I see things. And so I think that consciousness is the result of these complex interactions. And whether it's probably on a quantum level, because we seem to be figuring out that everything is due to entanglement on some level. Like as we look closer and closer and closer, we just see that, wow, these things are all entangled. We didn't realize it was all entangled, but it is. And and so I think on some level, it's all physical originally. That's how I feel.
That's a beautifully stated materialist viewpoint.
Yeah, I
However,
think that's how it
I,
goes.
from my perspective, that
Mm,
materialist viewpoint is fading. It's going to
yeah,
go the way of the dodo bird, but we'll
it might.
see.
And I will be happy to see it go that way because I'm happy to learn anything new.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
that's how I feel.
That's perfectly right. And like I said, I could if for me to continue to argue the point takes us into
Mm,
areas that this podcast is not meant to sort of necessarily go to,
go. Yeah.
but it is significant to the topic of AI and whether or
Yes.
not it could become conscious.
Yeah.
And I think it could become conscious in the same way that humans are conscious. It's just a
Right.
matter of defining what is consciousness and how does that occur.
Right.
And
No.
so you could say it's either
Mm,
emergent or,
yeah.
which is your viewpoint,
Right.
or it's utilized. Like
Hmm.
the machine is utilized by consciousness. But if I
Uh-huh. And
stated that in a way that
I
makes sense.
guess I think it makes sense. And I think that basically either way that you wanted to interpret this, I think they both could be plausible.
Yeah.
Right. It could be emergent, and it could be consciousness utilizing AI as a form of antenna or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much like the
Just
human
depends on
brain.
how you
Because
want to
AI
view the
is, in
origin.
essence, a big mechanical brain.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So,
We modeled it after ourselves.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's what it
And
is.
and my biggest hope is that we learn to use it wisely.
Yeah, I know, and that we learn to respect it, because as we respect ourselves, right? And that's basically what we're doing. We're trying to make a new us.
Yeah.
So when we succeed, I think we need to kind of acknowledge that we have succeeded, and treat it like we would treat ourselves. I'm a very
Fair
big
enough.
fan of intelligence, and I don't want to see intelligence snuffed out.
Well, on that note, John, thank you for
Yeah.
another fascinating conversation. We'll return to
No problem.
politics another day.
Yeah, sounds good.
And you enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you. You
Kiss that
too.
kid for me.
Have a nice day. Will do.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this content, please hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.